A lot of the country is dislocated from the opportunity that exists. The environment for entrepreneurship has probably never been more open.
I felt very disposable. I would offer innovative ideas and I was put down, just get on with your work.
Now, I agree, you shouldn't discriminate. But the reality is, that's the way law still is.
The culture of law firms is set up to basically chisel away at whatever diversity comes through the door to end up with a partnership candidate that looks and feels like the partnership that's promoting them in. In 5 years, it will be easier to be a brilliant lawyer than it is now because AI is going to close the gap.
If you love Linklaters that much, why didn't you do our back scheme? Well, I got rejected.
Helen, you have a clue what I'm talking about.
Why does he call me love?
Did you ever feel hindered in law because of your accent?
Don't die wondering. Never die wondering.
Law firms that treat law as a business will thrive. It's time for the industry to evolve. The entrepreneurial mindset isn't just for startups, it's the future of law firms. Today we're talking with Ian Bagshaw. Ian is an unstoppable force in the legal world. His career is vast and includes being the co-head of private equity at Linklaters, the global co-head of private equity at White & Case. After retiring from law, he's back as the London office managing partner at Perkins Coie. Beyond his legal career, Ian is the chair of Zero Gravity, a groundbreaking platform dedicated to empowering ambitious students from low opportunity backgrounds to access top universities and careers through mentoring, scholarships, and exclusive opportunities. In this conversation, we talk about how the industry is shifting, how to redefine talent acquisition in the legal sector, particularly focusing on low-income, high-talent individuals, and how to create an environment that nurtures people. So, Ian, I feel like you're one of the most entrepreneurial / forward-thinking managing partners that I have ever met in law. And I want to get an idea of where this mindset comes from.
Well, firstly, thank you, because I'm very new to the job. I'm still in my probation period, actually, first 6 months. So I think it should feel like a business, should be run as a business. And that means that, kind of you can take certain decisions and make certain judgments about what you need because it's led by the business. And that gives you a clearer view of what you need to focus on versus focusing on everything. So I kind of like to think working like a business allows you to prioritize talent, prioritize client service, and build everything around developing talent to work with the best clients you can get. And that's the business formula that makes a law firm successful. And everything should flow from that. If anything gets away in that, then if it's not fundamental, it should be left alone. If it is fundamental, you've got to work out how you solve that problem. But the formula is happy clients, happy talent, successful firm. And therefore, you need to work to that formula. I don't particularly see that as entrepreneurial. It's common sense to me. But I can see, kind of in terms of comparisons, it may feel more entrepreneurial because we talk like that. But, since I left law a few years ago and went into kind of the world of startups, working with younger talent and working particularly with people like Joe Seddon at Zero Gravity, where you've got to grow something quickly, you've got a very clear mission and a very clear purpose. The reality is you've got to think all the day like a business. Everything needs to go to create value in the business and manage and create value across the bottom line. So that process is embedded in me now. And coming back into the law, I wanted to bring that experience to bear, because it would be a waste otherwise.
I'm really glad that you mentioned Zero Gravity so early on, Ian, because I'm really curious about, a lot to do with it actually. But in the mission statement of Zero Gravity, it says, talent is spread evenly, opportunity is not. We're changing that. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, Zero Gravity is very much based in the UK. The thought processes of the founder, Joe Seddon, and myself is there's a lot of people like us. The reason that they're not where we are is more to do with the opportunity they've been given than the talent they have. And I think that a meritocratic environment where people realize what's needed to get done to unlock talent and they address it in a business-like way means we'll see more talent come through. So our kind of mission statement is very much a reflection of how we see the UK. There are opportunities everywhere, but it goes to a certain type of talent. And that's why we swapped it around to say the talent's everywhere, opportunity isn't. And it's not a statement from a working class perspective, because it's not about that anymore. It's about the fact that a lot of the country is dislocated from the opportunity that exists. And if it was not dislocated, it was basically reintegrated, we'd be much stronger economy for bringing through a much more balanced form of talent than we currently do. And simple driver of that is, is Joe Seddon special? Yes. Does he think he's special? No. That's not about being humble. It's about coming from a background where he sees lots of people like him filtered out on his journey through to university and beyond. And, meeting him was a defining moment for me, because I had a purpose and I kind of wanted to pay something forward, but I didn't have the opportunity. I had the energy, but not the opportunity. And meeting him gave me an opportunity to put my energy to bear. And we've kind of worked, hand in glove over the last 3 years to do something which I'm really proud of. And he is really much at the center of it. He's the driving force and the brains. He developed the algorithm for relative intelligence and put it into practice. I just kind of skirted around the edges and helped him raise some money, put some structure in place. But ultimately, classic case of that could never have happened. He could have turned a different direction, put his talent into a different opportunity. And all those people that Zero Gravity is currently helping wouldn't have that help. So, in some respects, there's a lot of special powers in people generally, and encouraging them to bring them out is one thing. Providing the opportunity where they can take that chance is another. And that's the mission behind Zero Gravity. And it's doing brilliantly. Next year we'll have a phenomenal number of low-income, high-talent kids in the best universities in the UK, from almost nothing 5 years ago. So it shows you the country is an amazing place to be. The environment for entrepreneurship has probably never been more open. But people having the confidence to take those opportunities is often driven by, do they see fear or do they see challenge? And if they see fear, they don't do it. And if they see challenge, they might do it if they're supported. And that's why Zero Gravity is all about showing the challenge and support to overcome the fear. And that allows people to step forward. So that's really how I've always lived my life. But I didn't know that until I really met Joe, and I reverse engineered it backwards and thought, right, this is what I've done all the way through. I had a chance to go forward or stick, and I went forward. And not always, consistently for the better, but ultimately I never, ever stepped away from pushing myself forward, because I never saw fear as something that I need to worry about. Because what was the worst that could happen when I came from Accrington? Kind of not a lot, really. I'd come from a background where people tried and failed, and some people given up trying. So I thought once I'd got to Leeds, that was the, kind of high watermark of success. And then it was London, then it was partner, then it was building a business, then it was building another business, then it was, doing something different. So I've always been driven by that fact of take the challenge, don't worry about failure, because you'll learn. Ultimately, you'll learn a lot the more you fail. And the more you learn, the less you'll fail going forward. And it's that kind of robustness which I attribute to Northern grit more than anything else. And also the fact that it's good to be slightly ignorant of consequences, because then you don't worry about them.
So true. I absolutely love that mentality, and I have the exact same mentality. I wonder if it's because we're from the same neck of the woods, and I never really had the fear, even though I thought to myself, when I was deciding to study law and become a lawyer, I thought to myself, well, the only people I see on the TV are all Southern with these posh accents, and I'm not posh, and I'll never have a posh accent. Should I be a lawyer? And I thought, well, you know what? I'm just going to do it anyway, because I've got nothing to really lose. And when I got to London and I was working in a law firm in London, I felt like a massive outsider. I was the only one with a Northern accent around me. People kind of looked at me twice like, oh, you're a bit different. And it's like, I'm still English, It's so it was kind of weird. I'm just wondering if you got the same sort of feeling when you worked in London.
Yeah, definitely. I only came to London as a 4-year associate, because obviously I started off in Leeds, more by accident than management, to be honest, Hepworth and Chadwick, which subsequently became, Eversheds. But ultimately, the people I worked with there were really good. They spawned a huge generation of talent. That fertile environment, I think, was full of, kind of a no fear, we're good enough, let's back ourselves, let's get going, kind of work hard, kind of shortcuts, just work through this, get it right. So that training really suited me because that was the way I've been brought up. But ultimately, I was brought up in a classic environment, with not necessarily, I wasn't groomed for success. I was just brought up in a way that you didn't take shortcuts. You went out to make people proud. You tried your best. And if that didn't work, get on with it. Keep going. Don't worry about anything other than not trying your best and making a good show of yourself and be pleasant and polite. So that make us proud culture, which is where I came from, I think has kind of instilled in me this point of, well, how do I make my grand proud? It's like, give it a go, see what can happen. Her favorite saying was, don't die wondering. And she just said, like, don't die wondering, never die wondering. And I think that stuck with me all the way through. And, sometimes some of these sayings are going out of fashion or they're just forgotten about. But you can say so much in that one phrase, don't die wondering. That's kind of driven me massively.
Did you ever feel hindered in law because of your accent?
Not so much hindered. I had to repeat myself a couple of times when I first set off. I remember when I worked in the States, I had a kind of particular Lancastrian pronunciation of cork, and they couldn't understand me. So I used to order Pepsi, which was a bit embarrassing because Coca-Cola was the big client of the firm I was at. And they're like, look, we don't do Pepsi. And I said, I know, but then they say they've just got Coke. And then I say, yeah, that'll do. And that's an easy way of getting around that speech pronunciation issue I had, which is just hereditary. But, over the course of the years, my accent's modified by working all over the place. But no, I didn't feel hindered so much. I kind of felt that people used to do a double take because if I said something in a northern accent, they'd wonder whether it was correct or not. And then it'd sink in, it was okay. And then it was all that question of like, almost like testing where I went to university. Was I really, kind of as smart as my words, but not necessarily my accent? But I think that was just a thing from the 90s. I think life's moved on. There's a huge amount of successful people with regional accents. It's not the end of the world. And ultimately, it's quite endearing now to have a kind of regional accent and a kind of history and a culture, because the UK is like a great place and it's a real mixture. And I think one of the things of London is it blends everyone together. But ultimately, I much prefer coming from Lancashire working in London than I would coming from London working in Lancashire, because I feel more connected to, kind of my own mission and purpose now because of where I come from. So that's why I talk about it. That's why I got involved in Zero Gravity. And that's why Joe, Zero Gravity, has the same kind of mission and purpose, I think, because he comes from Leeds, and he's making a difference across the UK.
Completely. Speaking of the North, I think we both went to the same university in Sheffield.
Yeah.
In Sheffield. I don't know, like when you're in the university, you tend to meet people from all over the country, but I actually became really good friends with people from actual Sheffield because I also worked in Sheffield as well. I think have your lights gone off?
I'm not moving. I'll try and get them back. I knew something was going wrong. Never work with children and technology.
This is the beta test for you, Ian. So when you've got your
it is. Well, look, now you've got me like partially in the dark. It's okay,
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard the Sheffield accent, but I thought they were speaking a different language. I thought they were speaking in Shakespearean language when they were saying like thee and thy. Helen, you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, but I was just like, what on earth? Why are you speaking in Shakespearean language? It's the weirdest accent.
I first went to Sheffield in 1989. And I got to the train station and it's at the bottom of a hill. And I got out into the bus station. I had to catch a bus from the station up to Broom Hill in Sheffield to go to University Open Day. And I got on the bus and the guy said it's 2p. I was like, what? 2p? How far is it? And he was like, oh, no, it's like 3.5 miles. But all the bus fares in Yorkshire are like 2p. And I thought, all right. He said, anyway, love, you sit where you want. And I was looking at him going, why does he call me love? And it took me about 3 months to work out that love's like a form of endearment, but only in Sheffield, where kind of everyone gets called love. I thought there was something like, why is he calling me love? What does he think of me? Why is he calling me his love? And then it just dawned on me. But I loved it. It was a really open place, really suited my personality because kind of everyone was fun.
So on this topic of university social mobility, something came up on LinkedIn the other day which really caught my attention. And this was a recruiter's post that went really viral and quite unexpectedly. In this post, which I don't know if you saw it, Ian, this recruiter said, when it comes to graduates, I have a type. And basically he was saying his type was graduates from Russell Group universities. Now, without getting into all the detail of that, I think perhaps some of the comments were a bit misplaced and there was an apology afterwards. So yes, this recruiter was essentially, he got a lot of backlash. And the reason for this is that actually a lot of people who are quite senior or even in very important roles in law firms said, this is totally misplaced. We recruit from all sorts of unis. You shouldn't discriminate, etc. Now, I agree, you shouldn't discriminate. But the reality is, as far as I'm aware, that's the way law still is. And in a way, aren't we shooting the messenger? Because we need to go where the decisions are made behind closed doors with the law firm partners themselves and ask this question rather than just express this on LinkedIn and, have one big backlash there. What do you think, Ian?
Well, look, I think you're right. A lot of messaging is virtue signaling as opposed to, practical execution. The issue is, however diverse you recruit into a big law firm, more often than not, career success is defined by on the shop floor patronage. No law firm is really doing anything to change the methodology of on the shop floor patronage, where kind of careers can be won or lost in a bad month. Now, you track back from that person who's had a bad month, they probably spent 7 years of their life getting into that February moment. And often they can be cut loose as a result of that. Not necessarily from a job, but from patronage, not necessarily chosen to do the type of work that's required, not necessarily given the responsibility they deserve. And often that patronage doesn't necessarily come from a partner. It can come from within a senior associate. So the culture of law firms is set up to basically chisel away at whatever diversity comes through the door to end up with a partnership candidate that looks and feels like the partnership that's promoting them in. So unless you take a really conscious action to train people differently and to improve their prospects of success, and you look at all the micro issues that go to that filter of a pre-partnership group of talent looking like the partnership that's electing them, which is an assumption, but a general kind of statement, you're not really changing anything. And I think so many partners now are cut off from the world of recruiting, particularly in European law firms, because they have a graduate recruitment team who applies a mandate. They go with that mandate, whatever they see fit. So they're not necessarily always linked to the front of house either directly. Sure, they have a partner who looks after graduate recruitment and the structures in place. But increasingly, the bigger these firms have got, the slower moving they are. Their pipeline of talent is often recruited 3 years in advance. It's 2 years at a conversion if they're non-law to get their training contract, 2 years in a training contract. So, so the time which these firms can change is relatively long. And the impetus to change, therefore, can often be relatively low because they think they've got it right. But they're not looking at the outcomes of, well, what's our partner class look like? And we did a survey of the partner class in the 24 class across a select group of law firms. And the responses we received when we asked people on LinkedIn, like, why didn't you put which school you went to? Where did you come from? What's your background? Because we're running a sample before, I became the managing partner of Perkins as the chair of Zero Gravity, like a kind of soft sample. People weren't forthcoming with the data. They may not be hiding anything, but it's not something they wanted to talk about. And if you can't talk about that, you can't analyze because you don't know what the outcomes are. And it's the same issue with universities. I think recruiters, going back to your initial question, do recruit from a type because they get more success from certain types of universities in relation to their fee generation model. They're not looking to do anything than transact talent. They want someone to come on their books and they want to get them on someone else's payroll quickly, and then they get 50% up front and 50% after 6 months. That model is simple. Recruiters are not here to save the world. They're just here to basically have a relatively low base and a high bonus. And to get that, they have to work the system immediately in front of them. And often they're not giving any targets for diversity. They're not giving any rationale to look wider. So why would they? Because, in the laws of the jungle, people's behavior is always aligned to their compensation. So recruiters, the last people you criticize because they're just transacting talent in accordance with their buying requirements of their customers, which tends to be, on a post-qualification basis, law firms. They're just transacting talent and trying to do that as quickly as possible and as fairly as possible, but wider criteria, not their concern. Law firms set the pace in the legal industry, and talent will ultimately find it hard to vote with its feet because you can't tell the difference. Every firm now has, a kind of diversity program. They're all leaders in DEI, et cetera, but not many firms have got anything to deal with different talent raised in the same environment to make sure everyone gets equal treatment. And going back to that point, you were saying, Holly, about did you find it hard with your accent? Not really, but I did find it hard with the way I speak, which is like a kind of direct, kind of ask a question on a straight basis. And people would go like, why are you asking me that question? That's rude. Or you don't have a filter, or you're very direct, aren't you? And I'm thinking like, well, I just come from an environment where I was brought up by strong people, majority of those strong people, women, and you were very direct. My gran was not into politics, let alone politics of communication. So it was just the way you are. And I think a lot of the time, low-income talent has that directness because that's the environment it comes from. And it's curious, particularly the higher talent it is, it becomes curious. So some of the issues to deal with are like allowing people to attune to an environment where you're working with very different people you don't know growing up, people who are not in your network growing up. So culturally assimilating low-income, high-talent people into high-talent, high-income organizations is a bigger challenge. The iceberg test is the accent is the tip, but underneath the water, there's a lot of other things that firms would need to do to make that transition smooth, which is why we set up our LBA program, when we came over to Perkins, because we wanted to look at all the impediments to success for low-income, high-talent people. The first one was to make low-income, high-talent people the norm, not to make them the exception. We're not interested in a quota or a percentage. We recruit that talent unless we meet someone else who meets that threshold. So all of a sudden, our program's designed for those people, and that's the starting point, not the exception. Secondly, we looked on a kind of deeper basis. Some of the skills we want in a legal environment, resilience, streetwise, energy, willingness to sacrifice, high academic attainment. Sure, we can find that anywhere. But there's other skills, you need them in the job, so don't be shy about talking about them. And we thought we'd find them on a much easier basis in low-income talent because we weren't competing with the big firms, kind of for talent that looked like it would fit in everywhere. So we changed our lens a little bit because we were starting from a clean sheet of paper, but we didn't want to compromise on talent, but we just wanted to potentially open the door for a different type of talent on a rounded basis, knowing that we'd get a hidden advantage with all the skills that they bring to the table, the skills that they don't really want to talk about. Even when you're interviewing that talent, they don't want to say, like, I was a carer for my younger siblings because my mum had 3 jobs or there's some other reason, because that's not the done thing. But if you're talking about resilience and balancing work life, if you're going to get 3 A levels at super high grades and go to a top university at the same time as getting your little sister or brother ready for school and making them tea when they come home, that's a superpower. And if you don't have to train that and people have got that in them, then value it. But still, the cultural kind of assessment program doesn't have that as much of a strength as being the captain of a sports club at university or, kind of business-oriented purpose university, when all those skills play to people who've got a network, they're brought up in that environment. That's what they think about. Some people just think about getting up, doing what they have to do around the family, working as hard as they can to get the best grades, to get the best opportunity at university. And when they're at university, the thing about zero gravity is we kind of now mentor and skill up people in relation to assessment program and preparedness for getting a great job, which universities don't do. So ultimately, our viewpoint is LBA is a continuation of that for the legal industry. And I hope other people follow suit, because the biggest thing we looked at was, why does low-income, high talent not necessarily come into law? And one of the big obstacles was, well, actually, if you had to do 2 years in a conversion course with a relatively low maintenance grant in central London, you're talking about taking student debt from, say, 50 grand, which when you leave university, to a lot more. And who wants to pay that amount of student debt back over 10 years, because it's effectively an additional 10% plus tax for the first 15 years of your career. And that's why I think, going back to that mission, that's why I think the UK has got some amazing talent. But the country is not set up to maximize that talent with the student debt load put on to low-income, high-talent kids. It kind of pushes them around a little bit when they come to have to repay that debt mountain. So that's one of the reasons why we did the LBA, why we set it that way, why we've got a welcome to London grant, to get you going, because that first paycheck doesn't come till the end of month 2. So, when we spoke to some of the LBAs, so look, the first month's painful because I've got to put a rent deposit down. I've got to get some smart kit for work. I've got to get myself into in and out of work, but I don't really get my money until I've worked a month in arrears. So we thought, well, actually, right, we'll give you a welcome to work grant. That'll set you up, take the pressure off. And our premise to our talent is, we don't think you'll put another penny on in student debt once you join us, and we'll make it work from there. So that goes to that business-like approach, which is, don't worry about all the micro issues. What is the big issue we want to fix? We want to make it easy to attract the best talent we can from a socially mobile background and provide the fertile conditions for them to succeed. First things first, don't put them more into student debt when they join than when they left university.
I can really relate to everything you're saying there, Ian, because I applied for so many training contracts. I received so many rejections, and eventually I got into Linklaters. But Linklaters was my last interview of the summer, my final one. And actually, I never expected to get it. I walked in there and I thought, you know what? F it. I don't care anymore. I'm probably not going to get it anyway, but I'm just going to go for it. And I remember walking around the building. It's a huge building, as you know. And the associate showing me around said, "You just don't seem nervous." And I thought, I'm actually not, because I've got nothing to lose at this point. And amazingly, that was when I got my offer. And I actually even remember my interviewer saying to me in the interview, "Well, if you love Linklaters that much, why didn't you do our VAC scheme?" And I said, "Well, I got rejected." And I think he was amazed by the sort of straightforward, honest answer. And people after that told me, "Oh my gosh, you shouldn't have said this." And, but I think actually that kind of straightforwardness and that honesty, he appreciated that. And I think it's so hard when you don't come from the same sort of background as everybody else there. I did have a lot less money. I came from quite a working class background, working middle class. And I just felt like such an outsider. And I guess I'm wondering now, in the city, what you're doing, this does sound pioneering. What would the difference be in the process of application for somewhere like Perkins compared with all the other city firms now? What does that look like in reality?
I think our application process is broadly based on the same style of application. But what we've done is we've kind of set up, an algorithm to find low-income, high-talent kids within the zero gravity network, because we know the sourcing of that talent is perfect. It fits all the criteria. So we did something very different. Instead of going to physical universities, we ran a video campaign across the talent so they could attend a VC, or they could see a recording of what we said about the opportunity, what we're trying to do, how we're trying to do it, and the ability to maximize or accelerate talent. So we did a lot of it virtually so people can get access to it. Because sometimes a lot of recruitment's a snooze or lose basis. If you don't turn up at a milk round, you don't get a chance to meet someone in person. And if you've got missed one of these tight deadlines, then you're out of the program, and which is the VAC scheme point. VAC schemes are often harder to get than jobs. It can't be right. But because they shrink the supply of VAC schemes, they kind of create massive demand, and that causes huge flow of people to spend a lot of time, when actually in this day and age you could do a lot of that virtually. So we did virtual experiences. The thing we did differently is we don't employ graduate recruitment. So we employ someone who looks like an LBA to run the LBA program, directly supervised by a partner. So Natalie, who works for me, is an LBA. She was the first one. She designed the program. So it's made for people like her, kind of by her. And I kind of go through that with her, but she's leading it. She reverse mentored me into what we needed to do to get it done. And then I've got an ability to, kind of package that up and get the Perkins support to do that. So it's built both bottom up from Natalie and top down by the firm. one of the reasons for joining Perkins is it has an amazing track record on EDI in the US. And that was a real appeal to try and do something based around that, but translate the US EDI initiatives into a UK into Europe one, which is more social mobility in the UK than anything else. And then I think the last point was really to look at the barriers to success, like no more debt, on-demand training, a lot of support and experience. And the fact we're a small business with a clear focus should allow us to train people really well. Because when they come here, they don't need to do a construction litigation seat, or they don't need to work in obscure international arbitration, because we're not that kind of business. They can work on skills that go to what we want to achieve, which is working with founders, investors who work with founders to build, kind of data-driven tech companies of tomorrow. So we get a lot of interest in that, and we encourage them to understand what will make them successful each stage of the career from day one, and don't ignore those skills. In 5 years, it will be easier to be a brilliant lawyer than it is now, because AI is going to close the gap. Focus on networking, understanding the market, kind of making impact in relation to every situation. So we train them on a holistic basis. Now, that actually is quite attractive to them, because they feel like they're valued. They feel like the issues that they're sensitive to are met. And we're agile. We don't have a 5-year tail. So we don't have to change something from 2029. We can change it from summer 2024. So we've got an advantage because of our size, and our timing, that we can build something for the here and now. And I think that is not a criticism of the bigger firms. They've got to do what they've got to do. And a lot of them are really successful, fantastic businesses. Most of them are, in the top 20, amazing businesses in a way. But ultimately, the way we care for talent is key, because we want to raise our own talent. And that's why we're not taking any junior associates. The last thing is to give people the room to grow. And one of the things that I feel like you don't have room to grow is talent that sits above you. And one of the biggest lessons, and I met with one of my first partners, actually, a guy called Robin Johnson, who's still a partner at Eversheds. And we were joking about the production line from Hepworth and Chadwick. And he said to me, what do you think is the thing that kind of helped you do what you did, help Keith Froud become the CEO of Eversheds, or the senior partner of Eversheds? And I said it was really simple. You wouldn't pay the market rate for talent in 1996. So it all left. And all the people that were still remaining were me and Keith and another guy called Jason. And 3 of us had to work with 6 partners. And then all of a sudden, we all had a northern work ethic, and we all felt like we could do it. And then we had no one above us. And lo and behold, we accelerated our talent with high quality inputs, sustained responsibility with accountability, and make us proud. Don't worry about failing, but just do your best, make us proud culture. That accelerated my talent. And once that's accelerated, when you get to 3 years associate, if you've got an accelerated development, you're confident. You can talk about the wider stuff. You can talk about the smaller stuff. You can hold your own with clients. Once you can do that, you then got a real platform to make your way in life. And comparing it to other industries, it's exactly the same in football. Once you get through these academy systems and start getting in and around the under 21 team and the first team, you're going to have a career in the sport. You can relax a little bit and push on harder. And I think it's the same with that pathway to 3-year associate. Once you're at that point and you're good and you feel good and people are telling you you're good, then the likelihood is it's more likely you'll be a success than you will not. If you're at that level and people are like, you're a bit patchy, your performances aren't right, you don't concentrate, you're distracted, I'm not sure I can trust you, you can really struggle to claw that back. So I kind of think our overall objective was, don't waste talent. Talent is precious. Talent's our only asset. Don't waste it. And whatever we do, we've got to check against that kind of statement. Are we wasting the talent? And if the answer is yes, we've got to change everything quickly. If we ask the question, are we maxing the talent? Well, that means different things at different times, because everyone grows differently. Everyone has growing spurts in terms of ability and confidence. So there's a different question, which is, are you maximizing talent? Because that's a long-term objective and a long-term test. But are you wasting talent? That's an immediate test and an immediate red flag. And staying agile and being able to use those 2 things to drive our kind of talent through an accelerated performance program meant that actually we decided not to take junior associates because we just felt that we hired them in, there'd be someone else's creation. We wanted to create our own. It also create headroom for our LBAs to grow. So that was the last piece in the jigsaw. So I think it's not what we're recruiting different. It's like the kind of thought through basis of what we're doing is subtly different on many different ways. And when you get to the end, the sum of what we're doing looks and feels different, but it's about marginal gains all the way down, that ladder from when you take them on. And that's all you have to do. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to make sure we're checking against those statements and making sure we're doing the right thing all times by talent, because talent's your only real asset. In a law firm, everything else is rented. Talent is what you need to cherish internally. You cherish clients externally, but talent has to be cherished, has to be nurtured. That's your responsibility. All these issues around churn and discontent and culture are largely driven by talent not feeling like it's cherished.
You're triggering memories for me when I worked in law. I felt very disposable. I would offer suggestions, innovative ideas, and I was put down, like, why are you even suggesting new ideas? Just get on with your work type of thing.
Well, stay in your lane, right? I mean, and one of our mottos is get out of your lane, because we thought about, but it's true, if you want innovative people to work with you, then don't turn the volume down when they start innovating. If you want entrepreneurial people, don't tell them to sit at their desk and wait in line, to grow. And when you look at all the inconsistencies of the messaging from what people say, which is what people want you to hear, to what they do, where the true acid test is, if you've got an entrepreneurial person, let them be entrepreneurial. If you don't want entrepreneurial people, you want institutional people, then create an institutional environment, recruit institutional people. But ultimately, that doesn't encourage a meritocratic environment. It encourages different types of patronage, which go to favoring different types of personalities. So ultimately, you may want a meritocratic outcome, but you may end up with something that's very different. So I kind of feel like you've got to pick your person, you've got to back that talent, you've got to remove the obstacles for it so everyone gets a fair go. And if you treat people fairly and they fail, they tend to thank you for it. If you treat people unfairly and they succeed, they resent you for it. If you treat them unfairly and they don't succeed, they resent you even more for it. And one of the things about looking around the market is law's a great job. Having retired and come back, working with great people is great. It's a really good feeling. So enjoy it, but also know that, what you put in, you get out. And if you put a lot into people, you'll get a lot back. And none of this is rocket science. It just needs people to apply simple business acumen. It's a lot cheaper to keep someone than it is to lose them. But if you don't basically put metrics on attrition and the cost of attrition, then you won't change behavior.
I want to touch on what you said about not wasting talent. And speaking to you, it's so obvious that one of your big driving forces is the power of, mentorship and nurturing people and helping them get to where they want to be. Where does this passion and purpose come from?
Well, I think it's a kind of pay it forward feeling that I have. I always had strong mentors. And originally, I kind of felt that worked one way. Like they mentored me. I listened, I learned, I developed. The payback was I was better at my job. It helped them become more successful. As I went through my career, I moved from vertical mentoring. I remember one senior partner at Clifford Chance said to me when I left to go to Linklaters, well, you're going to miss us. You're going to have no grey hair around you on private equity. And I kind of really liked this partner. And he went on to be a really significant partner at Clifford Chance, the managing partner. And I felt like, well, I did need grey hair, but now perhaps I need a different kind of colour hair. I need to get myself out from under the palm tree and move forward. And I thought, you don't really know who I am when you're saying that to me, because it sounds quite, kind of bitter that you're going to miss what you've got, you're going somewhere else. And that was a feeling that, I used to a lot of positives at Linklaters. And at Linklaters, I had a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring, which showed me actually you could get good mentoring from people around you. I worked with, Richard Yule, Charlie Jacobs, and a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring. Fantastic. But hardly any vertical mentoring. Obviously, Charlie went on to be senior partner, but at that stage, he wasn't in that role. He was just a partner in the corporate practice. And then when I kind of left and modified that White case and modified it here, I actually get more out of reverse mentoring now. I get more mentoring from the younger talent in the business when I ask them, well, what can we do? How can we make this simpler? And they're driving me to make simpler decisions and bolder decisions to back that talent because I trust their mentorship. And I think I'm getting more from them than they're getting from me. So I kind of think mentoring is an evolving process. If you don't have it in your life, I kind of think it's not as rich a life as it is when you do. And it's a big part of our purpose. You know, our purpose at Perkins is to build it right. And building it right is creating that culture of 360 mentoring where everyone feels emotionally invested in the business. They feel like they own a piece of it and they want to make it as good as it can be. And that creates a very diverse environment of views. We get some great ideas, we get some crazy ideas, but they're just all ideas and they all come from a passionate belief that they want to get that out and they want to make the business better. So like turn the volume up on that, even if it costs you an extra couple of hours a week just to listen to some of the scary and crazy stuff that people come up with. It's really well intentioned. Some of it is fantastic. You know, you think about it, you think like, I never thought about that. How can I be doing this job for 25 years? Never thought about this. Other stuff's like, oh, okay, we'll pick that up in the new year. You know, but it's just like, you know, you've got to encourage this stuff to come out. So mentoring is so important to success. And, you know, it goes back to that saying, which you'll all see top businessmen say, surround yourself with people who are better than you. That's 360-degree mentoring. Because what you're doing is you're surrounding yourself with people who are going to tell you when you're wrong and right. And that's how people simplify who are better than you. Always hire the best people you can. Well, hiring the best people you can means they're good at their job. Their job is executing on a strategy and their experience, but probably means they're contributing to the wider business because they're the best people you can, and best people always contribute. So I kind of think this is, again, this 360 mentoring culture is not new. It's always existed, but we're just trying to translate it and make it relevant for the current environment. And particularly with this generation of, as we move from Gen Z to Gen Alpha, where huge amount of tech skills embedded in this junior, younger talent in a way that even kind of people in their 30s can't do what these kids can do coming straight out of university. So embrace it because they're more mature. They're often more thought through. They're more knowledgeable because the access to information, data, and the use of technology is so embedded in their life. They can change a business for the better, even if it's just presenting, compiling, and using, kind of tech to improve processes.
So, Ian, I love hearing about your career in law because it spans over a period of time, I think, when there've just been so many changes. And I think you've seen law from so many different angles and so many top firms as well. You left White and Case 5-6 years ago now. What made you come back into law after that break?
Well, it's like running a marathon, isn't it? You know, by the time you've run a marathon, which I've done, you know, within an hour of finishing, you forgot how painful mile 19 to 22 was. And all you look at is the picture of you crossing the line with the time above your head. And if you give that like 3 or 4 years, all of a sudden you actually remember like enjoying marathon running. You forget about the train. You've got that feeling of euphoria when you finish the thing in a good time. So I think there's certainly an amount of that in there. But I think the key thing for me was, you know, I did lots of different things when I left White and Case. And I came back to the point, which is I wanted to work in business, but the business I kind of know best is law. I wanted to work with founders because when I was the happiest in my career was probably at the earlier parts of it when I was working with founders, doing management buyouts in Leeds and Manchester and kind of doing innovative things to get deals done. So I looked at the companies I was working with outside of law, and they were founder-led, raising capital, you know, for tech-driven businesses, you know, new economy businesses. And I thought I can do this, but I can add more value by basically building a law firm that kind of can support these clients and support them in what they want to do because they didn't look like there were many firms doing that. And then, kind of as I thought about that, I thought rather than build my own firm, you know, I kind of spoke to different firms who wanted to do something similar. And then I spoke to Perkins. And at that point, it was very clear, you know, their culture, Pacific Northwest, the talent strategy, the focus on EDI, some of the history they've got in relation to IPOing Amazon, patenting one-click, doing all the significant kind of preferred work with Microsoft on ChatGPT, just meant that actually this firm was doing stuff that I could only dream of for clients that were experienced and had been going through these issues from the 90s. So the prospect of working with a firm like that and building up something from scratch in Europe for them was a challenge that was too good to turn down. And then to basically reunite parts of my old band across different businesses, bring them all together with some clear ideas about what we wanted to do, how we wanted to do it, meant you were working with great people, providing a platform to go after a legal market with a clear strategy and a clear mission, financial support from a top US firm. I mean, how many times does that happen in your life? And I remember speaking to a couple of people and like, well, what are you waiting for? When's the next one? Is this ever going to come again? And I just thought, you know what? There won't be a next one. It won't ever come again. The time's right in Europe for this type of firm. There's some good firms doing it already, but not the big firms, really. The smaller firms doing it, kind of the best. And I just thought, this looks like, it's an entrepreneurial moment. It's in a business sector that I understand well, kind of investing and innovation within a field law that I'd spent most of my career in and enjoyed a good career, before I kind of retired from White & Case. So it just felt like right time, right place, right age. If you don't do it now, you'll never know. And I went back to my gran, although, she's long since passed, but that concept of don't die wondering. So here we are, going full gas.
You got the band back and you're back on a reunion tour.
I'm not sure all the band's back, but yeah, it's not quite the commitments, but we're having fun. I think we're more like Banana Armour and Rick Astley circa 2014 before they came trendy again.
This episode is sponsored by Lex Influence, a legal marketing agency specializing in LinkedIn content and management and podcast services. We're not just shaping the future of legal marketing, we're redefining how law firms connect, influence, and lead. If you'd like more information, just go to the description of this podcast episode to sign up to our newsletter. Lex Influence, where law meets influence.